Liz Scott, welcome. Here we
Hey,
go. It's great to see you here. And I was on the other stream on our first attempt at doing it. I was gonna say what I admire about you, but then I thought I'll wait until we're actually together, and then I can see the flush of embarrassment on your face as I explain it.
bring it
But
on.
okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, Liz is a coach and a trainer. She works extensively with all kinds of different people. She has done a lot of work in the school systems, working with school leadership teams, but in all kinds of other domains as well. She runs Coaching Connect and is one of the people who's really been instrumental in sharing this understanding with lots and lots of people. And one of the things I really admire about Liz is she has an inspiration for something. It was like, see, here's one of the things I've noticed. A lot of times, the things that happen for people is they get touched by this understanding. So they go, "Oh my God, why didn't anyone ever tell me this?" And then the next thing that happens is they get genuinely inspired. They go, "Oh, I want to get these principles out there." And then what happens is they kind of get insecure and go, "Oh, I'll do that once I understand it better," or whatever. Whereas Liz is she basically gets an inspiration. Oh, I could do this, or I could do that, or I wonder what would happen if this happens. And then she just takes the next step. She takes the next step and she tries it out and she moves forward and moves forward and moves forward. And pretty soon something cool is created. And I've seen her do that in a number of different scenarios. And so the one we're going to be talking about here today is an inspiration she had to take this understanding into her local community. And uh, just really excited to talk to you about it, Liz, and to explore it with you. And it's really great to see you here. So welcome, welcome, welcome,
Oh,
welcome.
thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to be here with you. And actually, I'm just going to jump over to my computer and share this recording so that other people can see it. So I'm going to share it on my wall. If you're watching and you want to help get this understanding out to more people, just hit the share button and share this conversation with whoever would like to hear more about it. So I'm just going to do that right now. There we go. So Liz, here's in time honored fashion, we've done virtually no formal preparation for this, but I my experience is that you and me have a great connection, and that if we just let the conversation go where it takes us, we're going to have a great experience. So I wanted to start by asking you, what first sparked your interest in taking this to your local community? And by the way, if you want to kind of give us a little bit of background on what you've been doing first, feel free.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. Well, I've been a coach for a long time now, over 15 years, run my own business, and came across the principles Inside Out Understanding probably about 7 years ago now, something like that. And that really shifted the way that I coached and how I experience life. And it's been and continues to be a fulfilling journey. And Stu and I, that's my husband, we work together on the business. We've done a lot of work with leaders in education and in education. We've traveled quite a lot to deliver training. And then last year, we had a couple of health issues. And I know Stu doesn't mind me sharing this, but he had a major heart surgery. He had a triple bypass operation, which was a real shock to us. That he's a very fit man, real shock that he had heart problems. And then later in the year, my dad fractured his neck and he's got dementia and he was in hospital for 6 weeks. So it just felt that 2019 was just, we kind of just hunkered down and it was all about health and just getting the family well and so forth. And so I got to 2020 and it was like, I didn't have much in the diary. We'd wound the business down just because we weren't sure of Stu's recovery rate. And it was almost like, okay, I'm ready to start reaching out again now. Where do I start? It was like starting again. And I just thought, you know what? I don't want to travel far at the minute. I just want to go and see what's happening in my local community. And so quite literally back in January this year, my local community is a small town called Ivybridge, 12,000 people. It's sort of intersected by 4 parishes. The total of the 4 parishes in Ivybridge is about 16,000 residents. I'm in one of the parishes. I'm just outside of Ivybridge. And I just thought, I just want to be curious about what's happening in Ivybridge around well-being. And I had this idea, like, you know, this understanding about the principles, about the inside out, is so valuable when it comes to well-being. How might I be of service in my community? How might I share this? How can I, what's going on? So I remember it was the beginning of January. I sat down with a cup of coffee. It was either January the 1st or 2nd. And I said to Stu, I've got this idea. I've no idea what to do or how to do it. I said, at the minute, I'm just thinking I'm going to print off some leaflets and just go and meet some people who've got businesses and shops and speak to them. But have you got any ideas? And he said, oh, there's a Facebook group for the community. Why didn't you try that? So I did. And that actually became a really good forum for communication. I didn't even realize it existed. And so that literally is how it was like, how can I explore well-being in my community? And that started in January. And I had this idea vaguely that I'd like to share the inside out understanding. But to be honest, January and February was just about finding out who was in my community, what people were up to. And to be honest, Jamie, I was really humbled by the extraordinary amount of great work that's already going on with people in the community that just get up and support each other. So I probably I wrote a questionnaire, and I probably spoke to about maybe 12, 15 community leaders who are running different groups. I spoke to the social prescriber, the community voluntary service. I spoke to my local community connector. It was just, I just wanted to sit down, have loads of cups of coffee, and then say, tell me about Ivybridge. I want to understand. And so that was basically January and February. And then things have progressed, and I'm running online wellbeing listener training at the moment, which I'd love to tell you about in a little while. But that's the kind of context and background.
Got it. And the thing that, well, there are a couple of things that jumped out to me. One of the things is that what made sense to you in January and February is just finding out what's going on. You know, you'll know, Liz, my whole way of thinking about how do you share the principles is calibration, connection, education, a tiny bit of education. So a lot of calibration, finding out what the hell's going on here, what's going on. What are some of because I heard you say you were really humbled by seeing the great work that was already happening. What are some of the things you saw and heard and experienced that really touched you?
Well, I think one of the key things is that you know, Ivybridge is like any community. It's got areas of deprivation and need, and what I was seeing is that people were just volunteering and starting up community groups. It could be for toddlers, it could be the karate group, it could be the scout group, it could be the Weight Watchers or the veterans group. It was like these were just regular, ordinary people who often got a day job as well, and they go, do you know what, there's a need in my community, and I really want to create a healthy space for people to meet. And so they did it. And that for me that's what I mean by humbling, is that they didn't really need me to teach them anything.
Right.
It was almost the other way around. It was almost like, oh my God, I had no idea that this was happening. And that people, and what they were doing intuitively, which I loved, is that they were creating, I mean, at the time, before lockdown, these were physical spaces where people came, and then in that safe space, what was happening is that people just naturally supported each other. It was almost like they were just allowing that which was natural and innate within people when it came to compassion and caring. They were just giving it the space for it just to naturally emerge. And I was really inspired by that.
I really love that, because it's kind of, you know, one of the things that as people who share this understanding, where we're kind of often say, you know, this is innate, it's already there. And certainly the way I see it is, there's so many signs of kind of wisdom in action once you start to get eyes for it. But I love that you were really like confronted by that and saw it, you know, example after example after example of it. Did you see, okay, there are places where the principles could make what they're doing even better, or was it more a matter of just building those connections with the community and seeing what was going on?
Yeah. It was a bit of yeah, a bit of both really. I think I saw the intuitively what people were already doing, so that was really awesome, and I made some wonderful connections. I did little podcast interviews with people in my community, and I started a newsletter, and I put the, I just wanted to celebrate what was going on. So that was kind of one of the things I did, not principles related at all. It's just like, these are just amazing people, just you just need to know who's in our community kind of thing. And then what I started to notice is that what probably was the bit that was missing, or maybe I could support with the inside out understanding, was that there was a sort of a sense that people needed to do this stuff in order to access their well-being. It was like, oh, I provide a karate group, and when people come to the karate group, then they're able to feel okay. Or when they come to the Weight Watchers group, then they feel okay. Or when they come to the food bank and they get food, then they feel okay. And I thought, oh no, this is something I could really support with, because how much more powerful would it be if the leaders in our community started to really recognize the innate strength and resilience and well-being that pre-existed, and had eyes for that? What would that be like? So that became my curiosity. And then, of course, we went into lockdown. So that's when plans were changed.
Well, but it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because I think it's so natural that we attribute our, feelings of well-being or calm or peace of mind or whatever to the thing we were doing when we noticed it show up. So that's so natural. And yet, what I heard in what you're saying is, like, I guess none of us knew that karate classes would be a thing of the past for the time being. But actually, if people could see where that was coming from, that wouldn't matter from a well-being perspective. I mean, people would still want to do things to take care of their physical bodies and that sort of thing. But knowing that your well-being, your peace of mind, that innate resilience is already there, that would do something for people. So did you get a chance? What steps were you able to take with the leaders and pointing in that direction?
Well, I got to the stage where I'd written a questionnaire, and I'd compiled this questionnaire, and then and this is very much how I work, and I know you work a bit like this too, is like I don't really have a clue what I'm doing, but I think when I get to that bit, I'll work it out.
Yeah.
So I'll compile a questionnaire, and I'm thinking, I don't know what questions to ask. So I found someone to help me ask the questions, and then it's like I muddled around trying to find a way to collect them, and I was doing it by email, and I was getting all bogged down with the answers, and I found something equivalent to SurveyMonkey. I thought, oh, that's what I need to do. And then I get all these answers back, and I'm thinking, now what do I've never done one of these before. Now what do I do? And then, actually what Liz Kaplan, who's on the Clarity coaching, she said, oh, I know someone who's at the University of Plymouth, and they could just help you just understand how to kind of condense what you've learned so that you can share it. So I went to speak to this person at the university, and then I came back and I wrote up the questionnaire, and then I reached out to people like the Social Prescriber who'd contributed to the questionnaire, and the Community Connect, and I said, look, I've got the results of this questionnaire now. Can I come and share them with you? And so it was almost like a step at a time, a step at a time, a step at a time. So all the time, I didn't sort of, I know you talk so much about relationship, and I'm so with you on this, but it's a really weird thing, isn't it? That it wasn't like I was doing this in order to build relationship. It just made complete sense. That at each step I would find my way, but actually at each step I was building relationship, because I was going back to people and saying, can I share this with you and show this to you? So I built this survey, and then I started to go out and share it with people. Then we went into lockdown, and then it was like, oh, I don't really know what to do now. And that actually coincided, we had a good friend of ours took his own life right at the end of March.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a real blow. And my 3-month project theoretically came to the end at the end of March. My Wellbeing Hybrid project, and Stu and I were kind of, really stopped in our tracks. Actually, it was very tough, and my heart goes out to so many people who have to grieve at this time without the normal rituals and ways that we do that. And and it was almost like, I came to this, do I want to carry on with this, or has it done its course? And then, you know, mid-April, it was like, no, this feels so right. This is just what I want to do in my community.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it crystallized for me that I just want people in my community to really get in touch with what happens when they truly listen to another human being. I don't want to train people to be professional listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I just want people who are parents, or they've got friends or family, or they work somewhere, and they know that they can listen better. I just want to provide that space where they can explore what we call listening for well-being, or well-being
Mm-hmm.
listeners. And then I started the online well-being listener webinars, which then became month-long programs, and might potentially become a longer program in the autumn for those that want to explore it further.
Well, I want to ask you about that. And just before I do, there's something you mentioned in passing, but I think it could be a big point for anyone watching, which is this. And actually, if you're watching this now, if you would like to, if you've got a group of people, whether it's your community or a particular audience or that sort of thing, that you'd like to get this understanding out to and share it with, type in the comments below. Just type, audience, or type what the audience would be. Maybe it's your local community. Maybe it's a business group you're part of. Maybe it's a particular, affiliation or something like that. The thing you said that hadn't quite occurred to me, Liz, but it made sense as soon as you said it, was that you discovered that there were already communication channels set up. Like there was an Ivy Bridge Facebook group. So all of us, that's like, a lot of times people go, oh, well, how will I get in touch with people? Well, often there are entire groups already set up, whether it's for, whether it's a Facebook group for your community, or a WhatsApp group for your street, or there are a lot of these things already there and in place once you go looking for them. So I just wanted to kind of underline that for people. Just because you want to reach out to a particular and share this with a particular community or audience doesn't mean you have to build everything from scratch. There are things already in place. So Liz, tell us about the listening project. What you sort of touched on it there. You said mid-April, I want to keep going with this. What was it that took it from what you'd originally been doing to kind of focusing your attention on the power of listening?
I think it just became really obvious to me that, and actually in the current climate too, it feels like that's the message, or that's my gift, or that's what my contribution is around supporting people and the capacity to listen. It just felt that was so important. And I know that a lot of people with the coronavirus have had their worlds turned upside down, to varying degrees, varying challenges. And it just seemed to me as though when we listen and when we're truly heard, that's the catalyst for as I say to people, for our natural well-being, just to kind of really be a felt presence, like really tangible in our lives. So it just made sense that because the people that I wanted to connect with, they're already doing amazing stuff. That they're doing great stuff. It was almost like this is the WD-40 of kind of making things even better in the great work that they're doing. So it just made complete sense to me that, to me, it's all about listening and listening. We often think listening is an activity of hearing another human being. I'm talking also that this is about deep listening within ourselves, which is almost the starting point, although people often come because they think they're going to be better listeners to other people, but actually that is the starting point where we start with our listening anyway.
Well, that really makes sense to me. Like the there's a way in which, Liz, certainly since I came across this understanding, one of the things that's made the biggest difference was just learning how to listen. And I prided myself on being a good listener before I came to it. And I was good at the outer game of listening, like noticing things, hearing things, seeing what people said, all that sort of stuff. But I didn't know anything about listening, kind of listening for that uh, quiet voice within, for that listening, listening as a doorway to deeper connection and to insight and to uh, resilience and well-being. So what did you do next?
So, and I have to say, I was really confronted along the way with lots of my usual habitual, you're not good enough, who do you think you are? And, all of that stuff, trust me, that is always at play all the time. But what I did next is, and I found this quite, I found it quite challenging. I thought, I'm just going to put on a webinar, a 2-hour webinar, and put it out there to people, people I've made connection with in my community. Just put it out there, and you press the publish button, and then you think, oh shit, what if nobody signs up? I'll look stupid. All this stuff, obviously, you know about it as much as I do, and then. And that was the beginning of it, and I had a number in my head of people that I thought, well, I'll go with it if we can get 4 to 6 people. I thought that would still be a good, that would feel like it was a doable experience for people. And I think on the first one we got 25 people sign up, which was fantastic. Nice. And this was part, and again, I just want to say this so far has all been part of what I call the gift economy for my community. It's almost like my volunteer contribution during coronavirus. Mm-hmm. But what we asked is that people who weren't part of this community made a donation. So we've made a little bit of money through donations. And then it just occurred oh, that was good. We had, not everybody turned up because, other stuff happens, but I think we had 15 people turn up on the call. And then we thought, we'll do another one. And then
so you're doing 12. These on Zoom or similar?
On Zoom,
yeah.
And so it was a little bit of input. So just the structure was, it was a 2-hour. Stu and I did a little bit of input. The message we wanted to say is well-being is constant. That's not the variable. Well-being is constant, and stuff gets in the way of well-being, or it gets clouded over, but it never goes away. So we thought that's the message we want to try and say in this, that may be different than they've heard before, so they go, this isn't quite what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And we did a very simple listening exercise where we just listened to one of them. So we weren't coaching, we just said we just want to listen, and then we would listen for 10 minutes to one of the participants, and then there would be a bit of feedback from the group about how that was a different kind of maybe listening experience than the general listening that we get engaged with. And it was a really great, we're still running them now. And then a charity in Somerset said, oh, that sounds really interesting. Could you do something for our volunteers? So we did the same format for their volunteers. And then the community voluntary service, CVS anyway, the community voluntary service in the South Hams, which is the district council area we're in. They said, oh, could you put on something for our volunteers? And again, we got paid for that, which is fantastic. So we've done 2 sessions for them, and we've got another one in July they've asked us to do. And then we had all these people that had been through it, and we thought, well, it makes sense if people are interested that we run a continuation. So then we said, let's do a month-long program. And we're in the middle of our 2nd month-long program. We've got 16 people on this one. We had 11 on the previous one. And we want to run something in July as well, because we just think that there's probably going to be enough interest. We've got the community connector on this one, and she sort of oversees, at the moment she's overseeing all the voluntary stuff that's going on in our community. She was with a group of community connectors yesterday, and she was like raving about the course, and she said, oh, you'll probably get some more interest, so we might get some more interest from community connectors in other areas. I don't know, may not happen. And then we just thought, with the courses that we've run, we thought, oh, I wonder if, wouldn't it be lovely if we were to just facilitate a group, again locally, hopefully locally in our community, where people just are on a bit of a longer reflective journey. Maybe they have a case study, or they have, you know, if they're an educator, maybe they work with a group of children, or if they work in a community group, that they use their group as the case study for listening, and we just are on a slightly longer conversation with them over a period of time, where they can engage in this inside out understanding through the what we're calling it well-being listening. So that's the way. Who knows? And it might all end next week. I have no idea. So we'll see.
But the thing I love about that, Liz, is so you've been using an approach I'm a big fan of, which is just take the next step, take the next step, take the next step. And you got hit with something I'm also very familiar with, that says, oh, who are you to do this? I'm not good enough, all that sort of stuff. And I think that a lot of times people, they think, oh, I'll wait till I feel like I'm good enough. I wait till I don't have that stuff coming up, and then I'll do it. But actually, what I've seen over the years is that when that stuff starts coming up, that's actually a go signal. That's the sign that I'm pushing through the edge of what of my old stories about who I am. So I love that you're doing that. But the other thing I think is really cool is you're following your inspiration and doing this, putting this out there, and now people are paying you to do it. But you were doing it because you were following that inspiration, that urge, that spark. Not because if I do this, maybe I'll make some money, but rather just because that's where the energy was taking you. So what are some of your insights and realizations and discoveries over this process? Like, so far, we're in June, you kind of kicked it off in January. What have you discovered so far?
Gosh, so much, really. I think I really see I do see real hope in what I see as the core and essence of who people truly are, like how they turn up, and the innate compassion and care and love that is there. I see that, and I think this is really kind of emphasized that for me. And maybe sometimes I think maybe I'm just this hopeless optimist. I don't know, and I don't care if I am. Maybe I am, but who cares? But that for me is, you know, like there's one person on our training who, she's socially isolating at the moment, and she's looking after her grandson who's autistic, and often when we're on the Zoom call, you can hear him in the background trying to get her attention. And she is this most beautiful soul that has seen something that she hadn't seen before, about her own well-being and the well-being in her grandson, that she thought she needed to fix and save, and is now in this different exploration, and kind of eyes wide open about how this relationship is changing for her, which I just find really touching and moving. So I think one of the biggest insights I've got is that this is really, really, really simple. It's really simple. And actually, the simplicity can actually be quite confronting for people. But that for me is, I keep bringing it back to the simplicity of what we're talking about, which is, you know, when everything dissolves about who we think we are, when that all dissolves, who we truly are kind of makes itself known, and then we just see that we are all the same, with the same energy, all of us.
Liz, you said that the simplicity can be really confronting. Do you have any examples of that, just so people can kind of get what you mean by that? But also, I think it's really cool for people to hear kind of real world stories of what happens as people start to get a glimpse of this. So what do you mean by that, that the simplicity of it can be really confronting for people?
Well, one of the things that people, we're really clear that we're not going to be giving any tools or techniques or strategies. It's almost like, and we ask people to watch a video before they come on the training, just so that they're not going to be disappointed. Like we're not going to do that. If they want that, that's not us. So, but people still want tools and techniques and strategies, and that for me is one of the things. It's almost like that there's a kind of a sense like, oh, we say, look, this is an understanding, not an application. But there's still a sense of, well, if I understand this, then that means that my life should be better, or they should actually now agree with my opinion because I've actually done this bit of listening in between in order for them to. And it's like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about an understanding. So it's constantly bringing people back to, people are searching elsewhere for peace and happiness, and it's keeping reminding them that agitation for that search is actually just a reminder that they're looking in the wrong direction. And it's just like, just look in the different direction. And that's what I mean about complicating it. And a lot of people have been on, we find, I don't know if you find this, but with the people that have been on quite a lot of training, like I've done a lot of listening training, and like I think they sometimes have got a lot more to sort of let go, whereas people that are completely new to this as an idea, they seem to grasp it often more clearly. So yes, that's what I mean. People are often looking for that which is complicated, or they'll say things like which we haven't said. So they say, oh, so what you mean we should do is this, and we're like, no, we're not saying that,
People are often,
But
if they've been trained in other models and that sort of thing, they're trying to fit what you're pointing to into their pre-existing model. And the point I often make is, if what you're teaching is something that is bigger than the existing model, you're never going to fit it into it. And so it's like trying to fit the ocean into a bathtub.
yeah, and just simple things like people saying, for example, some of the feedback we got from the previous course was, oh, I'm just not getting so hooked into the family arguments as normal, and the family are wondering why not, like, and it's like fantastic. It's almost like that they're no longer getting, I say triggered by what they'd normally do. That's how they were seeing it. But yes, it's like it's really simple stuff that we're talking about. Or someone says, "Oh, I spoke to my son the other day, and he was a bit upset, but I just could see that he was absolutely fine, so I didn't get lost in his story." And you think that's brilliant. So it really, really beautiful, simple, ordinary stuff is what I'm loving with the work that we're doing at the moment.
Beautiful. So the I can hear that your approach to it is you just keep taking the next step. So I'm really curious to see where it goes. Would you have any suggestions or pointers or advice to anyone who's listening and goes, you know what, I'd love to share this understanding more, whether it's in my local community or with this particular audience or that sort of thing? Any pointers or suggestions?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can just say what's worked for me, and it may work for you or not, but certainly for me, I think that the research, reaching out, understanding, that for me is what I would definitely point to first of all.
Research in terms of going and doing your homework, talking to people, finding out what they're doing
Don't
first.
assume.
Yeah.
Don't
Amen to
assume you
that.
know.
Yeah.
And just be really curious and celebrate what people are already doing. That people are doing amazing stuff, and actually we can really acknowledge what's going on just by listening and kind of going, wow, I didn't know that was happening, and thanks for doing that in our community.
Yeah.
And then what you're doing is and I found that a questionnaire was a really good thing, because it meant that people could go and reflect on it. you had their answers, and I asked for permission for email addresses too. So people, so that meant I could then come back to people if they give me permission to do that. And it was almost like building up conversations, and then what's happening is that you have all these people within your community that start to know what you're doing, and they go, oh, you need to speak to so and so, and I'm going to put you in contact with so and so, and then you're no longer the only one doing the communication. Other people are supporting you in that communication. And then I guess once you've kind of gathered in, once you've been curious and gathered in some information, I would say just sit with it and see what occurs to you. And then doing something like an online webinar where nobody has to kind of drive in their cars, you don't have to hire a venue, it's almost like it's a really simple taster to see whether what you see might be of interest is actually what is of interest, and nothing's lost if nobody signs up.
Exactly. I mean, the barrier to entry in terms of running a program basically is now so low. You literally get a Zoom membership and you're away to the races. Those are all great bits of feedback, Liz. Anything else that you kind of have taken away from this and that's really going to shape how you're sharing what you're doing moving forward?
Well, I see at the moment that this is potentially what I see is that what we're doing here in Ivy Bridge is such a simple thing to replicate elsewhere. It's so simple. It's basically just being interested in your community. And I know that, I mean, we often get approached by people who say, oh, I've come across the Inside Out understanding and I want to share it, but I don't know how to articulate, I don't know how to start, and what do I do? This is such a great way of starting that. You find the words by connecting with people and then trying to work out how you might explain something in their world that makes sense. That's how you find. You don't find that language by sitting at home trying to work out what you might say in a conversation. You actually, it's in the conversation that things start to crystallize for you and your articulation. So I'd just say, and communities are your local community. If you have got the chance to maybe offer something as part of the gift economy, which is what we did to start with, it's a really great way to get to know your community, to be of service, and then you develop yourself in starting to really understand how you might share this with others in the future. So yeah, I just say that's what I would say.
Beautiful, thank you. And Liz, where can people find you online if they want to find out more about this and what you're up to and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we've actually shifted the business name now to Inner Compass, and innercompassguide.com is where we're at, and we're just about to transition into a community interest company because we just see that our work is going to be community based, and that's just where we want to put our heart and souls.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. And I love the idea that you're creating something which other people may be able to say, oh, can I run this in my community and kind of roll it out and that sort of thing. That's very, very cool. I also, we're having a chat tomorrow for your podcast, which is focused on listening. Is the whole podcast focused on listening, or is it this?
Yeah, I'm running a series of 4 or 5 podcasts with a focus on listening, so I can share that with my wellbeing listeners to say, here are different people talking about listening, see their take on it. So
where can people find the podcast?
Yeah, they're on innercompassguide.com as well.
Wonderful.
Just look under podcasts. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, Liz, and for being with us here today. Thank you very, very much.
Just thank you, Janie, because you are so supportive with what we're doing and what everyone else is doing. And I just want to say a big thanks to you. You're a big inspiration in what we do.
Oh, you're so welcome. Give my love to Stuart, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Well, tomorrow, actually.
Yes.
Speak soon, Liz. Take care. Lots of love.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.